and welcome to Values and Vibes. Today we're gonna talk about forgiveness as a value with my two favorite guests, Tia Lancaster, CEO and founder of Rivale 180, and Luisa Bulow, business psychologist. Are you ready to find out how to unlock inner peace through the transformative art of forgiveness? Enjoy. Hello and welcome to podcast Values and Vibes. Today we're gonna talk about forgiveness with my two beautiful ladies, Luisa and Tia. And let's talk about that. Can you, Luisa, share us what is value of forgiveness by Rivale 180?
Yeah, so in our model, forgiveness is defined, I've got my card here, as to grant absolution and or exoneration of myself and others when wrong has been committed against me or by me.
Wow, that sounds cool. That sounds amazing. Tia, do you have anything to add?
The only thing I add is it's not that's not the place of psychology or entrepreneur founder. I'm going to start with Tia the mother. And Tia the mother, that when your children are young and they're upset with someone in the playground or a friend or even their sibling, and you talk about forgiveness, what I explain to them in its pure sense is you're not always going to forget. When you've been wronged or hurt by people, you're going to usually take note. Maybe you'd be a little more cautious. Don't be quite as open. That individual is going to have to gain your trust back a little bit. However, if somebody has the ability to come to you and admit that they are wrong, even if it really hurts you, that to me deserves an exoneration, because that is a really difficult thing to say. I was wrong and I said something that was really hurtful. I did something that I shouldn't have done and I'm sorry. I think that above all else is amazing to me. Maria, the quick story, my youngest, when she was in high school, had some kind of falling out with a couple girls, and it's all baloney. It's like it's over. It's kid stuff. However, it put a lot of strain on friendships at that age. And at that age, you're spending 80% of your time with your classmates at school, and kids can be mean. And so whatever happened, Maria never threw these girls under the bus. In fact, she got mad at me when I'd be angry about what happened, whatnot. Years and years later, I'm living in Miami, and one of these girls from her past sees me. We're out at the same restaurant, and I'm with my husband. I actually might think of you and Ned, Milena.
Oh my God.
Hi, Mrs. Lancaster. And I said, oh my gosh, hello, I didn't even recognize you. And I stood up and we were chatting, and I asked her about, she was, her university and experience and COVID, and we were just chatting. And she goes, and I need to tell you, I just want to apologize for what happened when we were in high school, and I go, oh my gosh, honey, you don't have to apologize to me. I said, you were kids. I mean, that's what happens in life. I said, but that is so mature and so kind of you that has sat with you, and that you are saying that to me. So thank you. I'll pass that on, to Maria. And I think, to me, that's going to stick with me forever. But what about, they're kids, you make mistakes. That's a lot of growth to be able to reflect upon yourself and then come back. And truly, I was really impressed with this young woman, that she had this ability, because sometimes I think it's easier. I mean, I think it takes more effort to be the apologizer than it is to be the forgiver. Because when you hold all that anger against someone, that's not helping. You know what I mean? It's just making you feel bad and putting you in a bad space. And then you're reflecting negativity onto the world. So that's my
Luisa, what do you think about forgiveness?
I think we're chatting before the podcast started. Not my strongest forte, not my best value that I activate very often. I think it's about initially admitting that you've been hurt in the first place. And I think that's probably something that a lot of people struggle with. Like, why should I forgive you in the first place? And then understanding, like, what was the whole reason behind it? Where did the thing actually stem from, I should say. But I think forgiveness probably brings people a lot of peace. I know that a lot of research shows it's linked to reduced stress and lower blood pressure and less anxiety, which 100% it is, because it's almost like that analogy of carrying the rocks on your back, and being able to let some of them go is that forgiveness. So something I could definitely get better at.
Well, I think we can all get better at that, to be honest. And I do think that, I think some of the greatest and most difficult stories you hear of forgiveness are those parents who lose children to murder or something. And then, they really go through, I mean, and then in the US, these murderers, if they're caught, are sometimes, if it happens to be a state that has a death penalty, are being put to death. And, that to me is where, wow, forgiveness, I mean, to forgive someone who has murdered your child is just beyond, almost like, I don't even know, I mean, but for the grace of God, go I have no idea if I'd ever any place in my heart for that kind of forgiveness. However, many of them, when they're interviewed, have said, I'll never forget, and they took something from me that they could never bring back. But I guess they have to have some form of forgiveness because they almost can't move forward. You almost can't move forward. I mean, if it's small little things and it's somebody maybe that you don't have the time of day for, and they're not that important into your circle of life, then I guess carrying that anger around isn't the worst thing in the world, but it can grow,
But not in those scenarios as well, because that fascinates me. But not forgiving that person doesn't undo the damage, doesn't bring that individual back to life. And I read something where it was an article on forgiveness, really, and it was basically saying, what's the alternative? It's not going to undo the damage. What's the alternative? And it's like, okay, be resentful for the rest of my life, and therefore more stressed, and all these negative things that actually impact your biology.
Yeah, very true. I kind of think something that's interesting, and maybe it's one of your questions, Milena, so I hope I'm not jumping the gun. But I think about forgiveness. I often think about it that in some ways, I think it's even harder to forgive yourself. I think that that's where a lot of guilt and suffering and depression come into people's lives. And I think that that's another reason why we've built Revaluate 180, is if you have an ability to forgive yourself for things that you're not proud of, things that you feel wrong about, like that young woman who approached me, that is where growth takes place, because you have to see when you admit a wrong and then you forgive yourself for something you're not proud of doing. I think that's even greater release. You know what I mean? That forgiveness of yourself, because it's hard to move forward. But in positive psychology, we talk a lot about how in our model, because since it's got a very strong mindfulness element to it, is I can't change this wrong that I've committed. But if I can't forgive myself, admit that there was wrong and forgive myself, I'm going to get stuck in that muck that I talk about. Like, I'm going to put myself back in that muck, and maybe not in that quicksand, and not be able to get out, and that's probably would cause a lot of anxiety and sadness.
But it goes back that you have to face up to what you did in order to forgive yourself, and holding that mirror up is probably one of the hardest parts of the forgiveness process. And therefore there's kind of two sides: forgiving yourself, but also when someone else comes to you, because you're probably on a bit more of a virtuous position in your own mind if someone
for sure
you for forgiveness, then forgiving
and every human being on this planet, we've been on both sides. So
sure.
For sure. And also tell me, can we choose to forgive? What help us to make that choice? Like, today I'm gonna forgive everybody who hurt me, and I'm gonna forgive myself. When I'm gonna make that decision, like, it's gonna be from today.
I don't know, Louisa, you'd be a good one to talk about that, because I think that's a lot about
experiences in my life. And I think you have to grow as a person to a point where you're ready to confront. It goes back to my first thing. You have to admit that you were hurt in the first place, and you have to go back to that emotion. And however long you've let something go on, probably the harder it is to get back to that place, to actually face up and forgive. And especially when it's things when you were younger, as an adult, you maybe have a different perspective on it. You can absolutely choose to forgive. And for example, in my own life, there's things I would love to go to just completely let go, throw the rock on the floor off my back, but I'm not there yet. And it's interesting because I said just before we logged onto the podcast that it's not a value that I know I'm very good at activating, but I said I'm not blocking it. I actually was incorrect in that statement. So the sand blocker, which is about withdrawing from threat, is what blocks forgiveness. So I was just checking it literally just before we logged on.
I was just going to say it, sand blocker.
Yeah, and I have the sand blocker, and it is burying my head in the sand.
Sand blocker?
Yeah, so sand is withdrawing from a threatening situation. We call it sand because it's burying your head in sand. It's almost like that flight response to stress, like, just get me out of this situation, right? Because you're protecting yourself. It's impersonal empowerment because it's self-protection and self-preservation to a certain extent. So I have developed sand. Interestingly, Tia and I actually talked about this morning
Hey,
about something else.
today.
But yeah, literally this morning that I've developed sand as a bit of a coping mechanism.
Mhm.
100% I have. So can I choose to forgive? Absolutely. But it goes to our model. I have a very blocked value pathway for me to get to forgiveness. So until I can really address why I withdraw, I probably am not going to be as forgiving as I could. It's funny because I honestly vividly remember being 16 and my siblings telling me that I hold grudges. And I honestly I was like, really? I definitely don't. And now I will laugh about it. Me and my mum will have a good laugh, that I'm the biggest grudge holder in the world. And it's true, but at the time I really didn't see it, which is kind of a crazy thing. But
Well, I think that that's very honest though, because I think that like in my adult life, just issues in my own marriage and whatnot, and over the years, that I'd like to think that I'm always a forgiving person, but there are certain things that happen in your life, and even if you tell yourself, like what you're saying, Milena, can you basically force yourself or just make that choice, even though
Yeah,
you might not
yeah.
feel it.
Today I'm not
I
gonna
think,
feel like this. Yeah.
yeah,
yeah,
I don't know if you can. I think sometimes time is a great healer sometimes. And then because I do think you can try. And I think that's being authentic is to be honest. Like I think Louise, you're being really honest saying, I just can't forgive. And I think I'm being maybe less honest with myself saying, yeah, I like to think I am forgiving at all times, but it's an active pursuit of that value. I mean, when you wake up, you just can't turn it on and turn it off one day. You have to maybe commit to, I'm going to work on forgiveness of this particular situation because I can't change it. And if I'm going to stay in a particular friendship or a particular relationship, or I want to maintain whomever this forgiveness is having to go towards, then I have to actively work at it. And whether that means going to my church or seeking out counseling or talking about it more with the person who has offended me, whatever it may be, I think that it takes a lot of active work. And yes, I think you can make that choice.
Yeah.
But if you're going to be honest with that choice, then you just can't say, oh, it's going to happen because I just said it's going to happen. You're really going to have to work at it in order to authentically forgive, if that makes
and
sense.
you have to let that feeling go. So can I forgive? Yes, but I can bring up what happened or multiple things that have happened. I can tell you exactly your words you said and what you were wearing and all these, weird things. That's how my brain works. But that's not forgetting, or it's not really letting it go.
Yeah,
So
well, I don't know, and I don't know. I think you're right. I think there's a difference between forgetting and letting go. I think you can begin to let go, and I'm not sure certain hurts you ever forget, but I
no,
think you just develop a coping mechanism around it to create the space for forgiveness. I think comes back to one of the reasons why I created the model. I didn't even realize it, but I've always talked about how I really went back to school after being, an employment lawyer and after raising my children to really understand the act of suffering and whether or not people truly had to suffer to live. You can suffer a lot at the hands of people who have done wrong to you. And went back to a discussion we had, after the fact where there were tears and stuff with the three of us when we were talking about things in our lives. And I think that suffering also comes down to a significant amount of forgiveness. And I think that I grappled with that because I wondered, I started to lean more into when certain things happened to me that seemed very unfair based upon a set of circumstances that it was unfair. Like, why me? Like I've done this and I've done that. And why would this person harm me in this way? And what I came to that really helped me on a path to forgiveness is why not me? Like, why not me? So many people suffer from a similar thing. And why not me? Because when I flipped the narrative to why not me, I was able to really kind of remove an arrogance to it almost. And I remember having this discussion with my mother, and she's like, well, that's not arrogance. You've been wronged. And I said, well, no, I have been wronged, but maybe it is arrogance. And maybe it comes down to a little bit of humility. And if I can be humble and realize that the world is set into motion, and maybe some people believe people are punished or not punished, or believe in God or don't believe in God, however they think, I think that the world is set into motion and certain things happen, and as maybe they shouldn't have happened. But when you flip that narrative a little bit,
Yeah.
sometimes I think it opens the door to forgiveness. I don't know. Does that make sense to you guys?
Of
A
course, oh
little
my
bit?
God, of course. No, I just want to give you my personal example. Maybe that's better because when I was preparing episode, everybody was asking me, okay, forgiveness, how you can forgive if somebody's cheating on you, you know, if somebody betrays.
Yeah, that's a
And I
big
was,
one, especially like in the age of growing right now in that those, marriage.
yes,
Yeah.
everybody was asking me, oh, you're gonna talk about cheating? And I was like, okay, let's talk about cheating, you know. So
Yeah.
because everybody probably in their lives in some early relationship, we all experienced cheating. And my first reaction, of course, when I found out, I was like crying. I was so angry. I was, how he can do that to me?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm so special. I invest so much time in him. I'm loving him. And then, you know, like when you go through all phases, Elisa and Tia, you can probably better explain what phases are like when you find out when you're in shock, then you're angry, then you're like so hurt, then you're crying, then you cannot listen love songs anymore, you know, like then you don't want,
Yeah,
then I
exactly.
decide,
In your car, you're turning them off.
yeah, like I'm like jumping and like, listen, Milena, you're gonna find yourself, look how you look. Then I'm like giving my ego buzz, like, you know, like you're gonna find somebody better, you know. So they're
Yeah.
like we have so many
A lot
fighting.
of self-talk.
Yes, and then I was really sad. Then I was standing in there's like a coffee room in my work. I used to work in bank, and then the lady who was cleaning lady, she came and said, "Why you're sad?" And I said, "You know, my boyfriend he cheated on me." And you know, it's always with somebody worse. You know, like in
Yeah,
your
yeah. But it's always with the stranger. It's usually with the stranger.
yeah, she was easier. You know, like maybe she was easier. And she said literally to me, "Why not you? Like, why you're
Oh,
so?"
exactly.
And
What makes you so special?
I was like, look at this lady. She's not, why are you telling me that? I'm so broken, you know? And she was like, why not you? That can happen. It's not your fault. It's his fault. He's going to lose you and he's okay with that, you know? And then
Yeah,
she tell me, if you want to forgive him, it would be easier for you if he confess, you know, to move on. Like
for
he's
sure. For
Yeah,
sure.
for sure.
That is
gonna
very
confess.
true.
And he's gonna tell you, oh, it's not about you. It's not like you're not in good shape or you're not you know, you're not interesting anymore. It's about me. I'm looking for something instantly. I want to have like, you know, like,
You want the
that
pain to be gone.
yeah, that he's still in game. He needs, you know, like some
Yeah.
attention or whatever, you know. And she told me like, did he confess? And I said, of course not. Who is gonna confess? And then I was thinking about that. Okay, he's not even helping me to forgive him, you know,
Mm.
because I think when you're thinking when we're speaking about, okay, he did something to me, but when I'm doing something to somebody else and he need to or she need to forgive me, I need to come and confess and said yes, I did that, and because of that. So you don't have those, you know, like stories in your life. Like
Oh,
I was
yeah.
trying
Because
to like
they say you recreate even worse. I mean, memories, there's so much study of memory and what you make up and what you don't make up, and memory is a very interesting thing.
I was
So
I was so motivated to go to the gym. I need to lose weight. I need to go to plastic surgeon. I need to change this. I need to work on myself. And it's not even my fault. I'm changing my whole life.
Oh, but I mean, but that's what wrong does to you when someone is
Yes.
cheating. That is like such an offensive because and that envelops so many values that trust, safety, loyalty. So
Honest.
that it's so many just important values in a person's life that it's offending. So it's very, very difficult. I read this on LinkedIn and I sent it to the girls in our family chat, and it's a quote, and it says, "If you are rejected, accept. If you are unloved, let go. If they choose someone or something over you, move on. Remember that, and every no from someone is a yes to someone better."
Oh my
Yeah.
God. Yeah, that's
Like,
literally what she said to me.
yeah,
She said to me, like, okay, now you close one door, it's gonna be open for another, maybe it's much better, you know, like, but thankfully it was much better. But you know, in that position, you know, like how I can help myself, how I can help if I have a friend who need to forgive, who need to continue, who need to let it go or whatever. Do you have any advice? How should I
yeah.
help myself
I
before
have
I help
advice.
somebody else?
I mean, I used to be very judgmental. I'd see friends suffering through husbands cheating because you do, and I was like had such a hard line, you know, that's it. You walk away, you're done. And life's just not that simple. It isn't black and white. And I think if I had a friend who was married to a complete dog, like, as we would say, or someone that's just a repeat offender and out there doing this over and over again, and is someone that has some narcissistic personality tendencies, and I saw that, and they actually asked for my advice, because you're not supposed to offer any advice about cheating to people, because they can get very offended unless they're speaking to you about it. Then obviously, and to my daughters, if I was doing this, my advice would be get out. You know what I mean? This person's not going to change. But if you have you know, 3 children or 1 child, and you have a great friendship, and you've had a lot of good experiences, I say that's forgiveness should come into play, because what you realize, I think, and what you realize as you see then people recover from these situations, is that you realize how easy it could happen to anybody. When I see some of my friends forgive, and then they were realized, and then maybe they were in a low situation themselves, and they had some kind of office interaction with somebody, maybe didn't cheat themselves. I think maybe that's the universe telling them, hey, look, once again, whether you believe in God or not, but for the grace of God, go I. Don't be too judgmental, because it's I think sometimes in marriages, especially if you are very connected and you have a good one, and you think the world of that person, and you put them too high up on a pedestal, and that fall is really big. I think you have to remember that we're human, and we're all human, and that's a terrible, terrible thing to do to someone, and it's a very difficult thing to forgive. But I think that if you have a lot of history and you have trusted that person, they've been there for you consistently in other ways, then I think that it is worth taking that step towards forgiveness. But taking that step is going to take some actions probably from the other person. You're going to have a lot of transparency. You're going to have to, that partner of this person or any friend of yours is going to have to be very willing, I believe, to go on that journey of forgiveness with you. And then you'll be able to tell, even at that point, if that person isn't willing to be transparent, isn't willing to give you a sort of sentence, you're going to need more regulation, obviously, at that point. You're not going to maybe want to give this person so many freedoms. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that I would advise them, if there's a lot of strength in that relationship, marriage, whatever it is.
A lot of people, they say, I
forgive
forgive you, but they still have pain. They're still angry. Like, I think they're using that word like easily. I was okay to forgive when I was like, I don't know, like 6 months after. And then I was like, okay, yeah, okay, he was young. He did that to him. He didn't do that to me. Like, I'm good. I didn't do anything wrong. So then I was ready. You told me like time is helping.
Yeah, it's a
Then
healing.
I was really ready. Like, okay, I need to forgive. I need to
Well, it's
understand.
traumatic. I mean, it's a trauma. Especially in a marriage, if you look at PTSD, and like when I look a lot about some of Maria's post-traumatic stress for being a childhood cancer survivor, one of the things listed among like cancer, war, is surviving infidelity. So that is a very, very deep trauma. So it's just, how much are you willing to practice positive psychology and get that transparency from that person, and then practice forgiveness and move forward? I mean, I don't think it's easy. But I think I think in the long run, it could be worth it for a lot of marriages, because people are people, and you might leave that situation and end up in another situation with someone much worse who you don't trust at all. You just don't know. It's the devil versus the devil you don't know. If there's love there, and if there's willingness on both sides, I think. You can tell us from your age side, Louisa.
No, I mean, it's interesting, but I think the hurt that you get in that scenario is always going to be with you. If you can forgive and move forward, the grip that has on multiple aspects of your life is probably a lot lighter, to be honest. I wonder if I could forgive that, but then I'm very pragmatic, and I wouldn't judge anyone's relationship or where they are, or even me, until I was in that moment, if I ever would be, so it's an interesting one in terms.
It is, but when you see the people around you, that pain that it does cause, you just
I've seen that in people very close to me, and it sucks.
Your friend, it doesn't hit your friend, you just want to go kill that person for them.
But do you think, because my core value is loyalty, do you think that because it's something like really important for me, loyalty is really important for me, do you think it was much harder for me than somebody else who is like, oh, he chose like freedom for core value, you know, like like
I think that, and as Tia was mentioning some values earlier, safety, trust, those and loyalty, they all sit in the regulation zone. And I have loyalty as one of my prioritized values too. And that's why I think for me, I almost have created cheating as a fear in my mind. So it's not just a thing that it's become bigger than that. And I think therefore for some people, if they allow that fear to come way too big, it's actually going to end up maybe creating worse results down the line because there's too much restriction. But I think people who have a lot of values in regulation, because regulation is about structure and order, and therefore people think, okay, well, an accountant, because they like having all their numbers and things in a row. It's also about social frameworks and how you believe social frameworks work and what respect looks like, and that everybody should trust each other and
how you moderate your personal behaviors.
Exactly, and what you expect from other people. So people who are very heavy in regulation probably, I would guess, would struggle a little bit more with that.
I definitely, because they're rule followers, and you know, when you follow rules, those
are rules, because it's our models of individuals, so about the rules you created for yourself and your own networks and your own frameworks, not the unwritten rules, but your own unwritten rules.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but I mean, those are also in some ways a lot of the societal rules. I mean, yes, people can divorce and you don't go to jail for cheating, but back in the day you did. I mean, until some king probably was cheating and then changed the laws of the land. You know what I mean?
And got caught.
Yeah.
It's probably cheating before.
What's the song, Milena, of Shaggy?
Oh,
it wasn't me.
It wasn't me.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God. In the shower.
Isn't it funny? Because I think if you asked a cross section of my friends and said about kind of in their like kind of late 20s, early 30s to say forgiveness, what do you think? I think they would go to cheating as well. It's an unfortunate thing that is what rolls off the tongue when we start to talk about forgiveness, and it says a lot.
It's probably, like I said, because it falls into trauma. So you've been married, and it says, and when I would read about like I said, a lot of the traumatic stuff that Maria has gone through with her health, they always list these are the most traumatic. I mean, with being shot, going through war, you know, crazy things, cheating. And it says sometimes it could take up to 2 decades for people to get through that. But the thing about it is, I think the hardest part probably for people is you can be actively working on what I talk about, really coming up with a strategy for engaging in forgiveness, especially with something so kind of profound like cheating on a partner. But you can also become resentful, and you can, and if you're going to continue to throw that back into that person's face, they probably won't have a lot of recovery, because you're reigniting that.
Not mentioning anymore. That's it.
I mean, you're going to mention it sometimes because that's just human nature. It's a deep, deep hurt, right? You got to believe that we're human. However, yes, throwing it back and it's like anything else. If you're going to forgive someone, you know, you're going to forgive your sister for, like, you know, eating the last ice cream sandwich in the freezer that you've been saving because you're on a diet for 3 weeks. Then, you know, you don't taunt her about it for the rest of the next 3 months. Yeah, you took my ice cream sandwich. You know what I mean?
Are you really forgiving if you do throw it back in someone's face? Not about the sandwich now, but because it's more letting go of that resentment and that anger.
Yes, for sure.
So you're not forgiving. You're living in this fantasy world where you think you have.
You might be trying. I mean, to be fair, you might be trying. I mean, it's like
I put myself in that category too. That's why I say it like that, because I reckon I probably think I've forgiven a lot of things, when really, if I look at who I am and how I behave, I don't think I've ever really fully let anything go. And therefore, I mean, the anger and the resentment, I can sometimes still feel it deep in my core.
Yeah, but how we can incorporate that value in our like daily life? Okay, I have also a problem with forgiveness because I'm just gonna cut you. Okay, you did that for me. I'm not gonna call you anymore. That's it, blocked. You know, and I think that's not really forgiveness. You know,
it's true. I've talked to her about that before.
Yeah,
I mean,
how we can incorporate that value?
You did listen. We talked about that, and we didn't even talk about it in the sense of forgiveness. But it was with a friend and something that they had said. And I talked a lot about to Milena. What I saw was that in her life, in this particular situation, that this person needed them and really looked up to them. And yes, they offended you and maybe it was wrong, and you could ask for their because can you, that really hurt me. You don't have to say, please, can you explain to me why that you did this or why this happened? Because then at least, like you said, it's getting that recognition of, can you at least admit that you cheated on me? And then I can grapple with it better, so I don't feel like I'm being gaslit, and I can move forward. I mean, you might never get that from somebody, but in a friendship, if you can, you're struggling to forgive someone, and before I cut them off, think about maybe what you give to them in their lives, because when we're giving to others, it's that instills us that better sense of confidence in ourselves, and it creates good moods and good feelings, and we go forward in our lives and have a lot more success in all areas because we're not carrying around this. So I think that once again, I'm telling you or asking you that I think what I've seen is that I guess it's a little bit of turn the other cheek. Never thought about it that way, but maybe like our religious thinkers from all our, among Christianity, I guess that is, turn the other cheek. It's easier to, to do that.
Forgive so you can be forgiven. How you say? What is the quote?
Forgive me once. Have you heard that?
Okay.
Shame on you. Forgive me twice. Shame on me.
Oh,
Is that what
is it fool me once? How you?
Fool me once.
Fool me.
Okay.
Once.
No, but I'm talking about like forgive
Same
me.
thing, I guess, because you're being
So
fooled and you're being lied to.
Like who are you to judge? So my last question, if you believe time is passing so fast, girls. Yeah. So can you give an example? Three of us. I'm gonna also give the example of what did you forgive? Like, can you give like example? Like it was really hard, but I forgive.
I'm old. So I have a lot of forgiveness examples.
Yeah.
I have a good one.
That is really hard. What is really hard?
I have a great, really one. I'll start. So, sadly, just in our family, we had one of my siblings had some issues when she was first getting married, and there was a lot of hurt, and we ended up not going to her wedding, which was terrible because we're so close as a family. And so what I had to spend a lot of time, because I had so much anger at the spouse that she was marrying, that we even came to this situation. So I actively, I remember even going to church, which I'm not always the best at going back to my spirituality, as my lost or forgotten value, and really praying that I could forgive this person, because I loved my sibling so much that and this is what she chose. So I needed to forgive, to actively forgive. And I remember literally I only had my first child at that point, just Victoria, actively working on that forgiveness. And it did work to a certain extent. It did.
And then you got so many memories because you forgive, like you spent so much time with them. And
well, and you're going to lose other people sometimes in your life if you weren't going to forgive in that situation. And if those other people are important to you and important to just everyday living in life and make up your history, then you should get down to the act of coming up with a way to forgive.
Louisa, what is your example?
That's a family example. I could probably give a family example, but maybe I'll go down a more of a millennial friendship route instead. When I was at sixth form, which is when you're kind of 17, 18, my best friend from forever, and there was a girl who got in between. The classic story, said a load of crap about me, made up all these lies, and she believed her over me, and we didn't speak. Our prom and everything, she was with her, we weren't together, things like that. And it was really rough, to be honest, as like especially when you go through hormones and puberty with like your best friend the whole time, and then towards the end of that, when you're going to leave school, it was a pretty horrible time. But anyway, this girl then did a dirty on my best friend at the time, and she realized that it was all wrong, basically, and came to me crying. And I have to say, it's interesting, because as a grudge holder, as I will hold my hand up and admit, and I need help with forgiveness, it was the easiest decision I ever made, because I knew that it wasn't her fault. And I think the bigger moral of that story, she's now my maid of honor. She's my best friend still to this day. I talk to her about everything, and I couldn't possibly imagine a life where she wasn't. the bigger moral of that story was she took a long time to forgive herself, and she cannot talk about what happened.
Yeah.
Our friendship to this day, I don't bring it up. We don't talk about it. She just cries. And it's
Yeah.
really sad because I have no bad feelings about it. But it's a
That's-
story that is told everywhere about young
Yeah,
girls.
it's amazing. I just watched a movie with Karen Dishner, my best friend from Long Island, New York, one of my oldest, best, closest friends. And it was called You're Not Invited. You're so not invited to my bar mitzvah. My bat mitzvah, because it is exactly that situation. I think the moral of that story is exactly kind of what Louisa said. It's a coming of age story. And I think
Yeah.
that's some of the first times that you're really having to suffering kind of your first kind of really big hurts, like middle school into like those later years of sixth form, A levels, high school in America. So I think it was a movie that could resonate with everybody throughout time. You know what I mean? It's just that same story. You really don't want to hurt the people you love the most, but that's what you do. That's what we do as humans. So I
and I
guess
think-
that's my story.
Yeah, it's just interesting that my brain went there because I honestly have such deep rooted things I could have said. And actually, I thought that is probably really, really the one thing I've actually forgiven fully in my life, because it was such an easy choice for me to make. And that
Well, and it's a big thing. That's
it was huge at the time. It was very sad, and it was painful to go through like nearly a year.
It's a similar to like a cheating rejection in a different way, obviously, because it's not
It was a rejection,
Yeah.
and it was like, okay, right, this chose someone else over me, albeit another girl, but
yeah, it was
and another friend. But it was it's interesting that I could let that go more easily than her, because she felt she had done something worth for me. But to get
because you both have that strong love for each other as friends. Obviously, she's a matron of honor and everything, and so that's what I said. It's often harder for the offender in a situation like that to forgive themselves, and so I think that that's very true. And frankly, my situation with my family was, once again, where's my arrogance? Like there's two sides to every story, and the truth is somewhere in the middle. So we probably had as much to do with that situation as the other party, and it was too important to lose. You know what I mean? I had too much to lose. So yeah,
definitely.
What about you, Milena? Give us your forgiving story.
My forgiving story, it's probably often story. Everybody get, like everybody was in the same situation. So, but my situation was specific because I had two romantic relations before my marriage, and in both I was betrayed. And it ends now. I'm laughing, but of course, it was hurtful for me.
Yeah.
And it takes time to get, I was so broken, and then you're expecting, I'm always like, oh, should I do this? When I go in another relationship, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, whatever. But honestly, I think that the proof of forgiveness, because I really, really forgive my ex-boyfriends, because I think they didn't do that to me. They didn't have bad intention about me. I think they were still maybe in love with me, but they just need instant attention, accomplishment, gratification. Yeah. So they were young, and my fault is that I'm always choosing good-looking guys. So of course, they're more how you say, exposed to ladies. But also I believe that if you're making a choice, if you want to give a number to somebody, he's going to probably call you, you're going to go to meet him, you're going to go to see him, so it takes two to do that, but honestly, my proof, even if I'm not in such a good relation, when I see them, I'm hugging them, how are you, not crazy relationship that we're still in contact. But I think that proof of forgiveness, that I forgive them, that I didn't bring that to my marriage. I was pure. I was like, okay, I'm not going to mention that in my life. I'm going to be fully trust. I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to be suspicious in my heart. I'm going to be pure. He have a new chance. Of course, I don't know if he's going to do that or not do that. It's not my fault, but I just don't want to be oh, I have a bad experience. So I'm not just bringing that bad experience in my new relationship.
Because that's not fair, because then you're tainting someone with old hurts.
I'm telling you, they did something wrong. I'm not wrong, and especially not my new husband, new child.
Shouldn't suffer that. I mean,
So-
you maybe looked for some different qualities and put up some protective mechanisms because we get smarter, and that's where guardrails come in. So you probably set up some more guardrails for yourself, but not specifically at your current partner at Ned right now, just for yourself, because maybe,
Yeah.
you know, there's some red flags that you're probably that you saw that we sometimes choose not to see.
But honestly, I think my problem
Old
is like,
sand blocker.
probably, and also it's I don't want to listen about it, and I don't want to hear, because I think I have a problem that when I'm in a relationship, I having my own friends. I'm still going to party by myself. You know, like it's not like it's marriage.
No,
Okay, we
right.
can go together, but I still have my friends. I still have my things that I'm doing. I'm going to work. You know, like so I have my own money. I have, you know, like so I was so independent, and maybe it's my fault that I wasn't so much like, oh, we are like together in everything, we're gonna, you know, like so.
No, I think you're right. That's you. Then you needed to find, you have to seek out that equally independent person who doesn't, who rejoices in your individuality, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And that's honestly for me, that's like a true proof of forgiveness, because I let it go. I just let it go, and I don't have pain about what happened to me. Oh yeah, it was hurtful, you know, I was sad, but honestly, I was suffering, you know, like,
Yep.
and the problem is because I was still loving them. That was the
Yeah.
major problem.
Because that's what rejection is all about. You think you still love them. I mean,
Yeah,
you-
like I miss
yes.
them. Not yeah, for real. I was missing. I missed them. I was like, oh my god, can I call him? And everybody's like, hide that phone. You're not gonna call him. You
Yeah,
know.
true. It's the worst. Like we become our worst selves after rejection. Like you
Yes,
just,
yes.
you do so many things
Bit
different.
waiting on the phone.
Yeah.
Everyone's
Oh
had
my
it. You're
god.
waiting.
Yes, of course, of course. I
Yeah.
was
Oh.
waiting for a message. They never send message, but it's fine. And I'm okay with that, because honestly, I think it was just time to stop that relationship. It was just a reason.
Yeah, it was the end.
It was the end, you know. And then I decided, like, okay, I'm not gonna go to relationship. I'm done with it. I don't believe anybody. If I see that somebody is cheating, I'm gonna tell that lady that he's doing that.
Right, exactly.
Now, if you ask me, it's always about them who is cheating, who is doing like wrong thing. So I think if they wanna if they wanna continue relationship, for example, with their wives or girlfriend, whatever, they need to confess. They need to come to say, okay, I did that. That was that. It's not about you. It's about me. I'm gonna try to not doing that. And
Yeah,
I would
but that
love
comes with a lot
to.
of, that comes with a lot of self-forgiveness. They have to forgive themselves to admit that.
Yes, but I think people who are doing that, they don't have guilty. They're not, they don't think that they, you know, like,
Some do, I would imagine.
Or they have the sand blocker, or it's easier just to like, you know, I mean, I think the whole cheating landscape is so huge, because I think people, you can read all about people, what should they tell, should they not tell, if it was like a one-off, are you doing more harm? Is it just to assuage your own guilt? Like, it's really interesting, you know what I
And
mean?
it probably is that.
It is, because
So-
because if you're not some consummate cheater and made a really bad mistake, you might have to, and you might have to live with it yourself. I mean,
You
I
have to
don't know,
live with
that's
that on your conscience, and that's probably
maybe,
what eats away. It goes back to that letting go, isn't it? But I think all our podcasts make me think a lot, obviously, but
Oh, me
makes me
too.
think there's a lot of growth with forgiveness, and it just makes me think that even in my example, I probably wasn't the best mate at that point in time as well, to be honest.
I
Like, what
agree.
I have done better.
It causes some self-examination. That's what came
Yeah,
with
it's
the humility.
interesting.
That was the humility aspect of it. And that's what I had to, you know,
Which you remember you said to me when I did the card sorting like 9 months ago, T was like, oh, you really got rid of humility quite early.
Did I say that?
And I remember you just saying this now. I remember you saying it and being like, the reason I got rid of it is because it's like, I'm humble enough, but I don't think being too humble gets me too far. But it's interesting because in terms of forgiveness, is it something that for me would come hand in hand? So it's quite.
Maybe. Didn't think about that, but maybe that's, I mean, what humility is in regulation, or is in personal empowerment, I think humility is.
Humility is in regulation.
Is it? I can't, it's one of those that,
No,
oh,
hold on, let me see.
yeah,
Yeah,
but-
regulation.
yeah, I mean, likely, I mean, it's just, yeah, well, that's where you see that why the model too, like I guess we can end on this. That's where you can see why we talk about how our values work alongside one another congruently. You know what I mean? Because there's so many overlaps, but they're competing for attention, you know, across those axes. And I think that's the dynamics of trying to find your own perfect imbalance in life, you know, and
It is.
feeling a sense of happiness and joy.
Yeah, completely.
Anyway, thanks again, Milena.
Thank
Amazing.
you so much.
Yeah.
It was so nice. And watch us on the next episode.
Can't wait. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
Bye. Bye.